Thank you very much, Jorge. And Elizabeth, that was a beautiful foundation for working with family. It was really insightful. So really thank you for that presentation. Well, before I start, I would also like to do acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we gather, the Gabrogal people of the Darug Nation, and pay my respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. I extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. I would also like to acknowledge the collective suffering and trauma of all the people of the world, in particular the people of Palestine. The aim of today's presentation, which Elizabeth did a great job, I feel like I can just maybe pack up and go, but I'll still do my bit. So the aim of today's presentation is to explore a case scenario and the strategic use of various family therapy interventions, focusing on the complexities of working with families impacted by forced migration, war, and trauma. Through this, I hope to enhance our collective understanding of conceptualizing family structures that are impacted by displacement and trauma, supporting families through culturally sensitive and strength-based interventions, and recognizing that resilience as a form of resistance amidst adversity is such a powerful component for so many of the families that we work with. And building safety and security as a basic therapeutic need. Before I introduce you to the family in my case study, I invite you all to close your eyes and in your mind's eyes, imagine the following quote as a backdrop to the rest of this presentation. These ghosts, men, women, children, walked along rural roads between the border towns of Europe with plastic bags and eyes that locals didn't want to look into for fear of seeing all the world's trouble. And while they waited for their papers to be processed, their past lives lay behind them in ruins. But they couldn't afford to mourn because of a more pressing problem. Their new lives couldn't begin. Kasabova, 2017. This quote so vividly encapsulates the complex, prolonged, and multi-layered survival challenges faced by many of the families we work with. It is also a central theme to the journey of the Massey family, whose name and details have been changed for confidentiality reasons. The Massey family was referred to STARTS for individual trauma counselling. After fleeing a war zone where they experienced severe trauma and distress, we thought that a family intervention approach would be more appropriate for this particular family in order to strengthen the sense of security as a family unit. Reviewing the family's referral, I initially felt overwhelmed by the enormity of their loss and grief. Of course, my countertransference was intense. It was shaped by not only the family's suffering, but by witnessing the slaughter and the dehumanization of the Palestinian people for over a year. However, what was absolutely amazing was upon meeting the family, I was struck by their resilience and unwavering hope. Despite profound trauma and loss and grief, they radiated a strength and faith that was both inspiring and contagious. The Massey family consists of a 30-year-old mother and her 4 children, 14, 12, and 8 and 5. The family arrived in Australia from the besieged Gaza Strip of occupied Palestine via Egypt, while the father stayed behind in Gaza because the family could only afford to pay for one of the parents to come and evacuate with the children. Some of the main referral symptoms included nightmares, severe separation anxiety, bedwetting, hypervigilance, and speech delays. This acute trauma, driven by the ongoing violence in Gaza, was further exacerbated by the family's arrival on a tourist visa, which restricted their access to basic essential needs like Medicare, financial assistance, and other supports. Hence, the family continued to struggle settling into their new home because starting their new life was still a hurdle. They still had to overcome so many barriers and an experience so acutely described by Kasabova. Instead, we have found that families arriving from Gaza or the West Bank carry deep and complex trauma. Trauma histories due to prolonged violence, displacement, and occupation. Their trauma is shaped both by historical and current events. The people in Gaza are historically refugees from other parts of Palestine all the way from the 1948 Nakba. Historical and ongoing violence. Gaza has faced blockades since 2017, severely limiting access to food, clean water, electricity, and medical needs. The forced displacement, ethnic cleansing, and the current Israeli assault on Gaza and the West Bank have caused widespread destruction and the death of more than 50,000 people, for which Israel is currently being investigated by ICJ for genocide, reflecting the severity of human suffering. And to, I guess, collectively sum it up, Palestinian people are collectively grieving their loss of homes, people, and their ability to live a normal everyday life. Being a Palestinian or Palestinian human rights supporter, you are targeted, criminalized in society, mainstream media, and politics. And as a result of all these, Palestinian people have continued to suffer various human rights violations, violence, loss, displacement, which has led to collective psychological and emotional trauma. Trauma expert Gabor May notes that in a place like Gaza, people experience trauma, the same trauma, again and again. It's not the trauma of a single event, but the cumulative and never-ending process of violence, loss, displacement that creates a condition for ongoing unhealed trauma. Considering the intersectional context of the Massey family, our shared therapeutic approach was that it was to be collective, and it was informed by various frameworks, such as the complex interaction trauma model, which is by Jorge and Coelho, as well as the systemic family therapy and functional family therapy. These models guided my conceptualization of the family's needs and directed me to address their unique experiences and losses. The complex interaction trauma model helped conceptualize the Massey family's resettlement in Australia as a multidimensional experience shaped by biological, psychological, social, cultural, and political factors. Their journey highlights how trauma is not just an individual experience, but deeply influenced by external systems, internal systems and interactions. For example, biologically, the prolonged exposure to instability, violence, and displacement impacted the family's physical well-being. The 8 years old child had significant speech delays. He also suffered from various chronic conditions that went untreated due to the limited access to the medical services in Gaza. Psychologically, the Massey family had endured immense loss, losing loved ones, their home, and the sense of certainty about their future. This grief manifested in hypervigilance, difficulty trusting outsiders, and ongoing anxiety. Politically, the Australian government's stance on Palestine meant that the Massi family, like many other Palestinian refugees, were only granted temporary visas. This status severely restricted their rights, barring them from stable employment, financial support, and even the possibility of permanent residency. This is more than a legal status. This policy sent a message that they were not fully recognized and that their suffering was not recognized. The broader societal and political rhetoric around Palestinians reinforces that the family's marginalization. As visitors, they felt pressure to remain silent, compliant, and unseen. Speaking out or seeking support could lead to being labeled as a threat or a fear that has been deeply ingrained in them as second-class citizens in their own home country. The Massi family's experience shows that trauma is not just about what happens before settlement. It is shaped by present-day politics, social attitudes, and systemic barriers. Their struggle was not just about healing from the past, but navigating a present where their security, belonging, and fundamental rights were continuously undermined. Similarly, and of course, Elizabeth touched on this so beautifully, systemic family therapy views families as interconnected systems where individuals are shaped by and contribute to the dynamics of the larger family unit. This approach helps that trauma is not just an individual experience, but a collective one, deeply influenced by relationships, roles, and communication patterns. In the case of the Massi family, their experience of colonization and forced displacement and the breakdown of their family systems was central to understanding their struggles. By framing their challenge and trauma as a shared relational experience, rather than focusing on individual symptoms, we were able to address their trauma in a more holistic manner while fostering collective understanding of their systems and also starting the journey of healing. Interconnectedness and circular casualty played a significant role in their dynamic. The mother's overwhelming grief and survival stress led her to become hypervigilant, constantly anticipating danger. While this was a natural trauma response, it created an emotionally charged environment that the children observed, sensing their mother's distress. Because of this, the children grew increasingly anxious and withdrawn, unsure how to express or even name their emotions without adding to her burden. As the children retreated, the mother interpreted, and we had many conversations about this, interpreted this withdrawal as a failure on her part, deepening her guilt and helplessness to protect her children. This in turn intensified her hypervigilance, further amplifying the children's anxiety and hypervigilance. Over time, this self-reinforcing cycle trapped the family in a pattern of fear, guilt, and emotional disconnection. Family structure and hierarchy were also disrupted. In the absence of the father and with the mother feeling absolutely overwhelmed and still in survival mode, the eldest son assumed the role of the family's primary protector. This shift in their roles created tension between him and the eldest daughter, who both competed in being the protector of the family. So their struggle for control impacted the family further, straining their relationships and deepening their emotional distress and creating more conflict. These altered roles also perpetuated stress within, making it difficult for the family to reclaim a sense of security and stability, or old familiar ways that the family was used to. Homeostasis, or the family's tendency to maintain stability even through dysfunctional patterns, was another key factor. The Massey family avoided discussions of death and loss to preserve a sense of equilibrium and safety. But this avoidance led to isolation and unresolved distress. Through our work together, we were able to create a safe space for the children to start, and the whole family, to start learning to name their emotions, to understand the turmoil that was happening within them, to be able to express, to emotionally express these feelings that were taking place, and slowly shift them towards being able to communicate it, and be able to understand of their own emotions and trauma responses. And that was a big part of the psychoeducation. This process allowed them to break free from, not completely, but more starting the journey of being able to free from harmful coping mechanisms and move towards collective healing. By viewing the Massey family as an interconnected system, we were able to approach their trauma holistically, focusing on resilience and emotional healing within the family as a whole. It was a relational concept, as Elizabeth explained so rightly. This perspective supported the family in addressing their collective challenges and being able to foster a journey of growth and the slow recovery. I love FFT, so I do use this a lot. And so there was some strategic use of the functional family therapy interventions and behavior change techniques, which enabled us to explore practical and essential strategies to help the family rebuild everyday structure and a sense of normalcy. These approaches provided the family with tangible tools to strengthen their communication, establish routines, and foster healthier interaction, laying the groundwork for trying to find stability and resilience in their everyday lives. Matching is something that everybody has, I think, heard me talk about so much. Matching in functional family therapy refers to the counselor's ability to adapt their approach to align with the family's unique communication styles, emotional state, and cultural context. It involves meeting the family where they are and building trust through empathy, respect, and cultural sensitivity. For the Massey family, I was able to conduct home visits in order to accommodate their circumstances. As they were new to the country and facing financial constraints, the mother was not able for all of them to travel all the way to the office. So me being able to conduct home visits was really important for the family to start feeling like they're within their own home, and that I'm coming to their home on their term. And so it already matched to their function, to their meeting their sense of security. Another example would include that when I went into their home, I would make sure that to show respect, that I would remove my shoes. And I would ask them, I'm going to move my shoes because I don't want to make your home dirty. I always made a note when I walked in to say to everybody in the family, Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be upon you in Arabic, so that the children felt a sense of familiarity, and that because I was there in their home, that they felt in control, that they were able to feel safe, that I was there on their terms. Additionally, I discovered that the children loved Cristiano Ronaldo. They loved soccer in general. So I made a note to always bring coloring pages with me, which were of Ronaldo, and they would always color and also give me some of those to take home as presents as well. This small gesture created a personal connection and helped engage the children in the therapeutic process, fostering a sense of trust and participation, and also being able for myself to be able to balance my alliance within the family members. Assessing relational functions and hierarchy is significant, as this step involves observing how family members interact, and understanding their roles, their power dynamics, and the connection to each other emotionally. By recognizing these patterns, I was able to tailor interventions that are aligned with the family's natural functioning and needs. The Massey family, I observed that the mother was the central decision maker, taking on both the protector and the provider role. The eldest daughter balanced independence with connection, especially with the mum, while the younger children expressed themselves more physically than verbally. By understanding this emotional and hierarchical dynamics, I approached each family member in a way that respected their roles within the family, ensuring interventions were aligned with their existing family structure and needs. Strength-based relational statements are statements that shift the focus from problem and faults to the strength of family's unique bond. As a counselor, I was able to identify and link the asset within the family dynamics, offering a fresh perspective on the family's challenges. For example, I shared this statement with the family. I said, even though you have all gone through so much pain and suffering, I can see you are all constantly fighting to protect each other. I can see that you all have so much hope and maintain so much hope in order to maintain a semblance of normal life. Sometimes it feels overwhelming, but every time I visit you, you are all present and you are all trying to participate in these activities, even though it seems strange for an outsider to come to your home and talk about very personal things. This statement highlighted that the family's resilience and desire for safety and security, even though there was conflict and fighting, but I was able to reframe it as the families fighting for each other, trying to heal and connect together. So reframing the trauma response not just as dysfunction, but a survival strategy. It reinforced their strength and reminded them that despite their hardship, they had the capacity to heal and move forward together. This is a family routine, a practical example of how I was able to align with the relational functions and match to the need of the family. I introduced the family routine to establish structure and consistency around what was often a really chaotic bedtime. This is the time where mom would want to turn off the lights and the children would go to their bed, but because they were scared with the noise of the bombs and they were really, really scared, they would all go to mom. So by being able to establish this sort of fun family routine activity, it was an enjoyable and interactive element that helped the family with making bedtime more fun and pleasant experience for everybody. The family has since reported that they continue to use this routine with fun family activities acting as a reward. This not only strengthened their bond, but also fostered positive shared experiences, but enhancing their sense of connection and beginning to feel that their lives can have structure and consistency and stability. I would like to say that we were able to see some amazing changes and outcomes for the family. Our priority was to establish safety and security through creating normal everyday structure and routine and consistency. We were able to implement a coordinated care approach involving collaboration with other professionals, both internal and external, to address the family's diverse needs. The youngest child since received support from an early childhood counselor, and she's amazing. The 12-year-old son is also seeing an individual counsellor for addressing bullying and settling into his new school. The children are now actively engaged in school and extracurricular activities, just showing that they're able to their emotional stability and social integration. This incredible mother pursued individual grief counselling and has since enrolled in TAFE, obtained her driver's license, bought a car, is actively involved in her children's activities. She created this beautiful Ramadan Kids activity, which was very meaningful to her cultural and spiritual connection to her family. It's important to acknowledge that my work with the Massey family was not defined by advanced therapeutic family techniques or elaborate interventions. It was rooted in genuine human connection. For a family that has faced profound grief, loss, and trauma, rebuilding trust and hope for a chance at a normal, safe life begins with meeting them where they are. And this is best achieved through a family-centered approach, grounding in authenticity and a willingness to adapt to their unique needs. Being from a refugee background myself, who came to Australia as a child, I know through personal experiences that listening deeply, showing empathy, and honoring experiences, we create a space where healing can take place. Where healing is not just an individual process, but one that's holistic, that's collective. It is through these small and subtle moments of connection that the Massey family began to rebuild their sense of safety and hope. Their journey reminds us that healing is not linear. It is layered with complexities and challenges, yet even in the face of immense suffering, the power of human connection can guide the way towards healing collectively. And to conclude today's presentation, I leave you with a powerful quote from a Palestinian psychiatrist, Dr. Yasser Abu Jamai, who said, and I found this quote absolutely profound in its simplicity. He said, "Hope in the form of offering normality in the most abnormal of situations is the most courageous and honest action one can take." Thank you, everyone. That's me.